Hi everyone, I'm Amy Kuster, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about things to consider when it comes to programming for school-age children. Now, when I'm talking about school age, I'm generally referring to grades kindergarten through 5, and I totally understand that that can be a pretty wide age range within there. You know, a kindergartner in one state who was born in 1 month could be totally different age than a kindergartner from a different birth month in a different state. So these are going to be kind of broad generalizations, but I think it's important to keep in mind that when we are offering any sort of school age programs in our libraries, there's a really great chance that we're going to have an age spectrum in our programs, and so we need to be prepared to accommodate that. So let's talk a little bit first about the kind of developmental stages of kids at these ages. So pretty consistently across the kindergarten through 5th grade age range in terms of socio-emotional development, these kids, they really need a kind of a firm structure, especially on the younger end of the spectrum. They really need kind of clear rules, so clear expectations, consistent rules enforced. So when you're thinking about putting together programs for this age, it's definitely great to think about how you're going to introduce the program in terms of how you're going to talk about what the timing of the program is going to be like, the order you're going to do activities, if there's going to be time for a break, time for questions. Just make those expectations very, very clear, especially if you have younger kids in the program. Also, really across the K through 5 age range, the idea of teamwork and being a part of a group is really, really important to kids' sense of identity. They're starting to develop personal interests, but really feeling like they're a member of a team is of utmost importance to most typical kids in the K through 5 age range. It's also really important for us to keep in mind their cognitive development during these times, and this is where we see the big split. So as a generalization, I'm going to do kindergarten through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th grade, although obviously there's going to be some nuance in the middle there. So on that early age of the spectrum, cognitively, kids are able to derive meaning or get information from objects. That means if they physically see something, hold it in their hand, make something, use something, they can learn from it. They can gain information that way. What they can't really do at that early age, their brains aren't wired for it yet, is take information from abstract concepts. That's going to be the older end of the spectrum, so 3rd, 4th, 5th grade approximately. You can talk to them about an idea, and they'll be able to learn from that idea. They don't have to have something physical or concrete or visual in front of them to be able to make sense of it. This is a huge thing to keep in mind when you're offering programs that span the K through 5 age range, because you'll want to achieve some sort of balance of making sure that you have physical materials in front of kids so that they can really engage with the material in the best ways possible based on how their brains have developed thus far. And one thing to keep in mind just in general for K through 5th grade, in terms of their language and communication development, they, by and large, for typically developing children, this is, they have a pretty robust vocabulary. They speak in, if not very complex sentences, at least they always use complete sentences, and talking is a huge part of their development just across the spectrum for these ages. So I think it's really important that we consider when we're creating our programs for school-age kids that talking is going to be a natural component. So we don't want to plan an activity, for example, that's going to include 20 minutes back-to-back of quiet time and personal reflection. That's just not going to work for that age group. So with a little bit of this background in the developmental stages of kids of this age, I wanted to talk about how kind of the top 5 tips that I've collected over the years through research and through practice that takes what we know about kids at this age and some tips that can allow us to create programs that are dynamic and engaging for them and as successful as possible. So they're tailored specifically to kids this age. So, number 1, offer programming that is engaging and participatory. So, as I mentioned, kids this age, talking is very important to them. They're going to socialize with their neighbors, but movement is also still really important for them. It's really hard, especially for kids at the young end of the spectrum, to sit down for a long period of time, to sit still. So participatory activities are, as far as I'm concerned, a must when you're talking about K through 5 programming. Like a lecture style that might work for teenagers, not going to cut it here. So think about when you're creating programs for this age group, how can you personally engage them? How can you ask them questions that they're going to answer? Give them sample activities or demonstrations or experiments if you're doing science programming. How can you get them directly involved in the activities? When they're involved, that's a huge positive learning experience for them. And I think it's one way to certainly think about programs, that they're not just programs, they're full-on learning experiences. And if we're giving kids a chance to experience something firsthand, whatever we're hoping they get out of that program, it's much more likely that they will actually get that. So that's a big plus, to make it engaging and participatory. So number 2, is to make the programs motivating. Now, that sounds kind of ambiguous or nebulous. So what I mean by making things motivating is to make them so that they're going to engage kids, as we mentioned, but so that they're going to be kind of in that Goldilocks zone of they're not too easy, they're not too hard, they're providing a good amount of challenge for kids. They're going to be accessible to kids so that whether they're coming into a program on a theme and they have a lot of background knowledge or they have no background knowledge, they're still going to be able to participate and have fun either way. So motivating is really making things relevant to kids. So when you're thinking of your program topics, when you're creating a program calendar, are you thinking about the types of interests that you're hearing kids express in the children's room? Thinking about the books that they're asking for, or the games that they say that they're playing. Paying attention to what kids are interested in can go a long way to allowing us to make programs that are going to be really motivating for them. And when it comes to making sure that the program content is going to be motivating across that age spectrum, it's important to think about how we can use the concept of scaffolding. So if you think of a construction project on a building, scaffolding is that kind of framework that lets people get up to a higher level. And it's the same sort of idea in education, and in this case in programs and learning experiences, that a lot of kids, based on whatever their background knowledge is or whatever factors, may need a little bit of a boost to be able to get to the kind of high topic that you're going for. So if you are talking about, say, volcanoes, and you're going to be making volcanoes and pretend eruptions using baking soda and vinegar, a kid in kindergarten who's never really encountered those materials or the idea of mixing things together in a chemical reaction, they're going to need a little bit of scaffolding. They're going to need that introduction that helps them to kind of take those steps up to the level where they can really engage with the activity, like the main activity that you have planned. So it's really important to think about how a kid with no knowledge or no previous interest in a topic who's in your program, how the topic is going to be motivating to them. And a lot of times that means making sure that the material is going to be accessible and approachable for a kid who's coming to it with a totally blank slate. So number 3, when thinking about programming for school-age kids, is I think it's really vital, and it's to be very, very intentional regarding having diversity reflected in your programs. I think this is something that we need to continue to do a lot better with when it comes to all aspects of library services for youth. I think a lot of times the collections and programs and the content that we have in our libraries is not always representative of the communities we serve, and it's certainly not representative of the country that we live in, which is incredibly diverse. And so I think it's vital to reflect that type of diversity and acceptance of that diversity in all of our programs for this age for school age kids. And it's only going to become, not going to say more important because it's incredibly important already, but it will be have worse and worse effects if we don't do it as we continue to go forward, because statistics are showing that kids in school of school age now are majority people of color, and that's just talking about one type of diversity. That doesn't even get into like topics of ethnic diversity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, socioeconomic status. So being very mindful of not only how we are including diverse materials or activities that are going to reflect different worldviews and different experiences that maybe some of the kids in your library don't have regular access to. Being mindful of including those things is really, really vital. And almost without fail, being mindful of including aspects of diversity acceptance and making sure that you're reflecting a wide variety of worldviews and perspectives in your programs, that's going to allow you to really check the boxes of making something motivating and making something engaging. They kind of go hand in hand. And so if you're going to think of a single thing to set a goal for yourself in terms of creating new programs, I would say ask yourself the question, how am I reflecting the diversity of our community or of this country in this program? Because if you're not doing that, you're going to have to work harder to do everything else to make it a great program for young kids. So number 4 is to use all of the resources at your disposal. I think a lot of times in programming for school age kids, we start to kind of default to what we know about story times. If we think of story times as the bread and butter of school or of public library programs, and those are for preschool age kids, we think about we have books at the center of absolutely everything, maybe some songs, some props, some crafts. So if we think of those as kind of the core elements and then try and translate those directly to school age programming, I think we end up leaving a lot of great resources out of the equation. We're not going into the project with a full toolbox. We're just using a small portion of what we could be doing. So absolutely think about what books and other library materials you can use in your program, but also think about what kind of tech equipment you may have. Are you looking at doing something with, I don't know, any topic? Do you have iPads or other tablets in your library that you could find an app that's going to help reinforce the topic? So use that as a resource so that you don't just have to, if you're doing something about the human body, you don't just have to have a big like DK eyewitness book that shows the human body, but you can also have kids work with an interactive app that lets them kind of see inside different layers, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, all of that. So thinking very broadly about the resources at our disposal is super, super important. And I would encourage you to also think about staff knowledge and community knowledge as terrific resources when it comes to creating program opportunities for this age group as well. So think about what people on your staff are interested in, and is there a way that they could kind of take that personal interest and create it or weave it into a program. So for instance, if you have a staff member who's really into sewing, is there a way that you could tap that expertise and interest into a program for school age kids that introduces the basics of sewing? Using personal knowledge like that as a resource is going to not only offer kids an opportunity to encounter a new topic, probably something they haven't done before, but to also get to engage with that topic with, if not an expert, at the very least with someone who is incredibly passionate about that topic. and it goes a really long way for a kid to be exposed to a topic by an adult figure who is really, really interested in that topic. That sort of passion and interest is oftentimes very contagious, and if we have enthusiastic adults and community members helping to present programs to school-age kids, that's going to be that much more inspiring to those kids to continue to explore those topics and whatever topics they find personally fascinating. It helps them channel that curiosity in really great discovery ways. So yeah, think about all of those resources at your disposal. And number 5, the last thing I like to think about when it comes to school-age programming for kindergarten through 5th grade, is to figure out ways that I can collaborate, maybe partner with people. I think one of the easiest ways to start collaborating basically immediately in a library, without even having to go outside of the library itself, is to talk to your teen services folks. What sorts of programs are they doing? What sorts of interests are they seeing with their teens? And could you tap some of those teens to participate in your school-age programs? We know that school-age kids, they typically really look up to teenagers, kids who are a couple of grades older in school than them. They love learning with them. They love just kind of being around them. It's got a great role model perspective. And we also know that teens who act as volunteers or mentors in programs and activities with younger kids, they become more personally empowered. They're more confident in their abilities. They are feel that they have a stronger sense of belonging to their community. So I think considering a youth-teen collaboration in terms of offering programs for school-age kids has huge benefits for both age groups involved. And what it really means is that you can have the expertise and the mentorship of these teens in your school-age programs in a manner that is going to help school-age kids to feel a greater part of the library community and the community at large, but also to form really integral relationships that are going to be important as those school-age kids age into becoming teenagers themselves. So collaborating internally is a great thing, and collaborating with people in your community is remarkable as well. I find this particularly useful when I see that kids, school-age kids in my library are interested in topics that I don't personally have a lot of knowledge about, but I know that there are people in our community who do have that knowledge. So I will try and reach out and find out, at the very least, what are some great resources to explore a topic that is of interest to these kids, but ideally to create a partnership and bring in someone from the community to help lead a program or to guide an activity, or even to just talk to kids for about 5 minutes at the beginning or end of a program so that they can see a real face connected with a topic. It kind of goes back to that sense of if you can present kids at this age with something physical, especially if it's a person who can give a first-person account, what they're going to get out of that is so much more information than if it was just kind of someone talking second person or third person about, this is what it would be like to do this job versus this is what it is like to do this job. It makes a really big difference. So to quickly recap, in thinking about offering programming for school-age audiences at the library, I think it is really integral to think about, and it's going to be beneficial to you and your program quality to think about making it engaging and participatory, motivating for the kids involved, to make sure you're being intentional about how you're incorporating diversity and that you are including diversity in your programming, for using all of the resources at your disposal, and 5, collaborating. So that way you're not just limited to your own pool of knowledge or your own set of resources, but really it comes to the sky is the limit for your school-age programming. If you have any questions or thoughts or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find my contact info on my website. It is showmelibrarian.blogspot.com. And thanks for spending some time today. Bye.